Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, from whichever time zone you may be calling in from today. We'd like to thank you for joining. My name is Rebecca Cronin, and I'm one of the customer success managers here with the Altair Data Analytics team. Now, some of you might recognize my voice or perhaps my name from either participating in our onboarding sessions or within our user community platform. The customer success team, we're here as another point of contact for you to reach out at any time with any questions, concerns you may have around Altair solutions, as well as if you're unable to get a hold of your account manager. We also provide assistance in giving you access to the online user community as well as the Altair One user portal. Now, if you haven't joined the user community, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a great opportunity to connect and collaborate with fellow peers and our product experts. You have the ability to post and answer discussion blog posts, as well as see some of the helpful knowledge-based articles. It's also your gateway to our customer support. If you have any questions regarding our user community, please feel free to reach out to the team at da-csm@altair.com. Which brings me to some housekeeping. On the right of your control panel, you should see the handout section. It is a copy of today's PowerPoint presentation. And in this PowerPoint, there is a list of very helpful web links, such as our community support, etc. So again, we're very excited for you joining us today for our Ask the Expert session. As it is, our goal is that these sessions provide you an open time slot to ask your questions freely, as well as an opportunity to learn some of the topics that were voted among your peers. So that being said, there should also be a question panel on the right side that you can type in your question, or you have the opportunity when we open the floor to raise your hand and we can pass the mic so you can ask it live. Otherwise, with that question panel, you could submit. If it's something that you want to be addressed privately, then please make that comment. Otherwise, we're going to share it with everyone that's in attendance today. And if we don't get a chance to get to your question, we will do so in a follow-up. So now I'd like to introduce you to our expert. It's Steve Caiels. He's one of our senior professional service consultants. He's worked over 29 years in various technical support roles, including that of Altair, 20 plus. He's started off as a technical support engineer, promoted into our pre-sales consulting and training specialist team for our MIA, and he's now in the senior professional service consultant role. You might have had the opportunity to work with him today on some other projects within the community or directly. So our topic is going to be an overview of Report Warehouse. It's a Monarch Server component that you may or may not be aware of. So again, in that question panel, please feel free to ask those questions. And again, if it's something unrelated to the Monarch Server component Report Warehouse, that's okay. We'll also address that. So at this point, let me locate Steve to make him presenter, that we can dive right in.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. And I see Monarch Classic open right now, Steve.
Perfect. Okay, great, thanks. So yes, as Rebecca mentioned there, we're going to take a look at Report Warehouse today. So Report Warehouse has been around for a long time, a couple of decades, I think, probably. But it's traditionally been very separate to Monarch on the desktop and Monarch Automator, Monarch Server Automator. But as we move on to the units type licensing method, so all of you that are already using Altair units may be aware that you can use those units to run any of our Altair products. So traditionally, if you wanted Automator, you'd buy a license for Automator, and then if you wanted a license for Report Warehouse, then that would be a completely separate scenario and would typically run on different servers. The way it works now with the units drawer is that, in theory, what you're actually running is a Monarch server instance, and that server instance can be doing several different jobs. It can be running Automator, and it can also, within the same instance, theoretically run Report Warehouse. Now, of course, the more you ask the server to do, the more impact it's going to have on the performance, not only of Report Warehouse, but of Automator as well, particularly if you're also running SQL Server on that same server. So there is a bit of a caveat there in that Report Warehouse certainly can, from a technical perspective, run on the same server as Automator. But in a typical production deployment, we would normally advise running the report warehouse in a separate instance. But say from a technical point of view, and certainly if you're just looking at it to see whether it's going to be a benefit or not, then you would be able to run this potentially on the same server that you're running Automator, with the understanding that if you're doing a particularly heavy job in report warehouse, then it will impact the performance of Automator at the same time. So what is Report Warehouse? So it's a very different concept. Those of you that are using Automator will know that that's all about sort of batch processing. So you build all your model files in the desktop product, and then instead of having to manually launch Monarch, open up the reports, apply the model, and then export the data, it's at the highest level, it's an automation engine for that. So you can throw as many reports at it as you like, and then those will be picked up, the model gets applied, and the results will be exported and distributed potentially to wherever you want them to go. Report Warehouse, as the name suggests there, we have this warehousing, this storage component that goes alongside it. But it's obviously more than just a folder containing files. So I'm going to use this music report just to sort of go through the principles, and I'm going to start off from the very beginning. There's nothing pre-configured in Monarch Server, so you would be able to use this session to recreate this if you wish, using your own reports, assuming you already have Report Warehouse instigated. So I guess the first thing is to work out whether you have Report Warehouse available. And as I mentioned, if you're using Altair units, then it should be relatively straightforward to get that. So what we want to go to check is, I think if you have Automator, it's Monarch Server Automator at the moment, then you'll be familiar with this login page, and the login URL is msadmin. I guess potentially this could be changed, but it's unlikely. It's very, very likely to be msadmin. If you have Report Warehouse already deployed within your server, then you'll also have an MS Client website. And you can see it looks very similar, but we've got the client here. And of course, the URL is MS Client instead of MS Admin. So I think it's overall, it's probably unlikely that you'll have MS Client here straight away. It wouldn't normally be deployed at the same time as Automator, but this is the easiest way to check that you may already have it deployed in there. If you don't, then I'd suggest you get in touch with your rep, and then you would be able to organize a session where this can be deployed for you. And if you're deploying it as in a sort of a test environment and you're going to run it all on the same server, then it will draw the same number of units. So there may be some sort of services costs depending on how involved you want us to be in setting it up and sort of going through the demonstrations. But it shouldn't be a huge cost or a huge interaction to get it working. So let's start off and get going on actually using the product. So I'm going to use these report files first of all. They're just the standard music distribution files. And if we have a look at it in Monarch, I guess the first thing to mention is that it sits in nicely with Monarch Classic. And currently we can't use the Data Prep Studio workspaces to populate the warehouse. It is a Monarch Classic model that needs to be used. So at the moment, there's no model applied to this. It's just the standard report. And I'm going to be using two models mainly to get this into Report Warehouse and to show the functionality. There's an extraction model and there's an index model. So the extraction model is pretty much as we'd expect it to be. It's got all the fields that we want to see in here. And if you're a Monarch Classic user, or I guess a Data Prep Studio user, you'll be familiar with the concept of having details and appends and potentially page headers and footers and all those sorts of things. And the concept of Monarch on the desktop is you open up the report, you apply the model or the workspace for Data Prep Studio, and that enables you to lift out the structure of this sort of semi-structured report and turn it into a data table. So in this extraction model, we have the data table, and that's again pretty much as we'd expect it to be. I mean, there's no calculations on here or anything like that, but there could be, of course. There is a filter, so this returns filter here, you can see it's just picking up order numbers that start with RA. So out of our unfiltered table of 91 rows, we've got 3 that have got the RA number in there. So anything that's predefined in this model file is going to be available to our report warehouse users. They won't need Monarch on the desktop, so all they will need is a login to Report Warehouse. And again, in terms of unit draw, that's very much cheaper than running a desktop copy of Monarch. So the idea is you take away the complexity of Monarch and you take away the licensing cost of Monarch, but you give all your users the top functionality of it. So we can get a table out of it, we can apply filters and sorts. We can summarize the data. We'll be able to see this summarized data directly in Report Warehouse without needing Monarch and without needing Monarch knowledge to get these results. So that's the extraction model, which is, say, a pretty standard model. There's nothing special you need to do to use that extraction model in Report Warehouse. We also have this indexing model. And the indexing model is something that you wouldn't normally do for the desktop product, and you can see it's a very cut down version of the index of the extraction model effectively. And what the indexing model is going to do is allow us to determine which fields we want to be able to search and extract and segment data on when we take it into the report warehouse. So because for this example, I'm maybe not particularly interested in finding label numbers. We have free text search as well, but in terms of indexed sort of high-speed searching, I'm not interested in looking for label numbers or descriptions, but I do want to be able to quickly retrieve order numbers and customer names. So there are 3 reports here, January, February, and March. But what we'll do when we bring this into Report Warehouse is we'll apply further segmentation on top of this. And this will give us much more flexibility in terms of retrieving the data and searching the data, but also applying security to the data. So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to break up this report into all the different customers. So you can see we've got the customer here on the first page, and then we've got basically it's split up. So everything's organized by customer. A customer could potentially go over more than one page. I don't think it does in this report, but it wouldn't be an issue if it did. But what I want to do is that I want to say every time there's a new customer, I'm going to break this up and store it as a logical separate document. And those documents can then be searched and retrieved independently. Effectively, what we'll be seeing is instead of having 3 reports, we'll have 20 or 30 different documents, each document being a single customer from a single report. And that's done virtually as part of the definition and part of the ingestion into Report Warehouse. Now, there's one thing missing from this model file. I've left it out on purpose so that I can stress the importance if you are doing this later on. It's very important that that Monarch knows how to segment this report. So what I want to do is to break this up into pages. Every time a new customer, it's going to break at the beginning of the next page. So this does not have any page breaks in at the moment, and I can tell that because there's no dotted lines. So sometimes when you open up a PDF or you open up a report file, those files will have embedded page breaks in there, in which case you'd see a dotted line. In fact, if I bring my extraction model back in again briefly, I think this one does have a page break in there. So these dotted lines, this is telling me that the extraction model actually has page breaks in there. Now that's not too much use to us. It's the index model that needs to have the page breaks. So if you are replicating this later on, then you need to make sure that your indexing model also has the page breaks in. So you see there's no dotted line at the moment. I need to say that what we are as humans reading as an obvious page break doesn't actually have the page break character in there. So I'm going to have to put that in for us so that when we ingest it, it knows where to split. And that's just a case of doing a right-click, new template, making sure we choose the page header template, putting the trap on that we want. So for instance, the slash of the date. I'm not going to extract any fields here. I could do a 3-line sample and choose the month name as a field if I wanted to, but the most important thing is just to get the page break in there. Not really interested in extracting data. So now you can see this model, the index model, has the page breaks. So when it segments, it's going to know to segment it in the correct place for us. So I'm just going to quickly save that model. And that's all we need to do in the desktop product. So let's take a look at what we've got in our warehouse at the moment, just so you know I'm not cheating. I'm going to log in as administrator, and the warehouse at the moment is completely empty. In fact, it's even worse than empty to a certain extent. It doesn't have anything defined in there at all. It should still log in. I think it's probably just timed out. So excuse me a second while that logs in. Our document search and our report search are completely empty at the moment. There's nothing in the warehouse at all. If I was trying, it can't even select the document type. There's nothing predefined. So you can use these steps starting from scratch if that's of interest to you later on. So we define the documents and we ingest the documents through the administrator. The client is only used for the retrieval. So we log into the MS admin website in the normal way. And again, I'm going to log in as administrator. And I'm just going to do a couple of quick steps to make life a little bit easier when we bring the document types in earlier on, or later on, sorry. There's a folder here called Report Warehouse, and this is the folder I'm going to use to create the storage and to ingest models. So this, of course, might well be a network drive. In this case, it's just a local drive on the same machine. So I don't have anything at all set up at the moment. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to set up a couple of system settings. So I'm going to go to System Preferences, and I want to first of all set a location. No, it's likely you will already have a location here because they would often be defined as part of the Automator installation as well. I'm just going to copy this from another screen, and I'm just going to put in the name of the server. Okay, so that's the Windows name of the server that we're using for this demonstration, and that's it for the location. Nothing else to define. I'm then going to come into a named path. And there's already one for Automator, as you can see, and there could be many more, but I'm going to add one specifically for Report Warehouse. I'll call it RW, and I will browse out to the location I've just defined and choose my RW folder that we were looking at a moment or two ago. And again, nothing more to do there. Got the extra set of slashes there. So we now have those two set up. We can now start defining our report warehouse. And again, as I say, I'm starting absolutely from the beginning. So there's not even any storage. It doesn't know where to store the files or how to segment the file storage or anything like that at the moment. So the first thing we do is we go into the report warehouse storage and create a storage volume. And I'll just call this V1. So the idea of having multiple volumes is that you can have a local volume or a volume on a high speed, a network resource, and then as reports become less used, you can archive them off to different volumes, different groups, automatic backup, automatic archival. So there's an awful lot of sort of management and workflow that we're skipping over in this quick demonstration, but it does need some configuration if you're putting it into a full sort of deployment. But for now, I'm just going to choose my report warehouse name path that I created just now, and I'm going to create it in the storage folder. So this storage folder is completely empty at the moment. It's just literally a Windows folder. So I've got a volume 1 storage. I'm only going to have the single volume. And then I'm going to create a storage group called Group 1 or G1. And that group is going to go into the first volume. Again, nothing to do here. But you can see here we have the possibility of creating copy volumes and primary volumes and archive volumes and all these sorts of things. But for this, we just create a volume 1 and a group 1. Nothing at all to configure in terms of performance or anything like that. Once we're into here, we can now start actually building the documents. So in the document management, we're just going to work our way through all of these branches. Most of them we don't need to do very much in at all. The first thing we do is to define the index field. So I'm only going to bring in the music reports here, but if you imagine you had 10 different reports and they all had a customer field, you could create a custom index that would allow you to search across multiple reports if all of those reports shared the same index file. So there's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation here between your fields in the model and your index fields in Report Warehouse. You can see I have a chance of importing the fields. So this makes it really easy and saves a little bit of stepping and checking. So what I'm going to do is import the fields directly from the model file, from the index model file. In order to do that, the model file needs to be in the warehouse, in the server library. So I'm going to go into server library, into models, upload the models, and then I'm just going to drag these two models. So there's nothing special about these models apart from making sure that we've got the page header in the index model. But apart from that, they're absolutely standard Monarch Classic models. But they must be classic models. We can't use the Data Prep Studio workspace for that. So I'm going to load these two models up into the warehouse. And that should be done. Now I can come back to my report warehouse index fields, and I can now import the fields from my index model that I've just uploaded. Just reading that model file and getting the fields from it. So that model file, you remember, only had those two fields in it that we want to be able to search and index by, and that's the customer and the order number fields. By default, they will be available for selection and they will be encrypted. So if security is a huge issue, then you may want to leave that encrypted. Bearing in mind, these are just going to be stored in the SQL database. So assuming you've got an extra layer of security on top of the SQL database, then it's typically not so important. But if you don't want to encrypt them, then you can remove that, and removing the encryption tick opens up the ability of doing the dynamic search. You see, I'm not able to select dynamic search on the encrypted order number. So I'll leave one encrypted and I'll remove it on the other and enable the dynamic search. And we'll see the difference of these two when we get into the client in a moment or two. Going to save that. There they go. The advantage of bringing them in from the model file is that it automatically sets the length correctly, so I don't need to worry about truncating data accidentally and that sort of thing. So let's go into the document group. I'm going to create a document group. This is the easiest bit. I'm going to call it music. So the document group is typically related to a business process or an organizational unit, and it will be the collection of different document types. So literally all you do is you name it at this stage, then you go into the document type, and this is where you do most of the work. I'm going to create a document type, and this relates to a specific report layout, so the music distribution reports, for example. So I'll just abbreviate that to music dist. I'm going to put it in my music document group that I just created, and I'm going to store it in group 1. You can see now we've got these three different model types. We have the index, a pre-mining, and a report model. The index is, of course, the sort of the minimalist model that only contains our fields that we want to index by. So I just select it from the library. Pre-mining, I'm going to skip over for now, but it opens up an additional feature once we get into the client. The reason I'm skipping over it is because it takes longer to process and longer to ingest the report files, and it also dramatically increases the storage requirements within the SQL database. So I wanted to show you the functionality you get without pre-mining it. If you need additional mining capabilities, which I'll talk about when we get there, then you can pre-mine the data as well. And then finally, I'm going to choose the report model, which is the extraction model that I uploaded just now. You can define multiple models, and you can apply security at this stage so that Group A can only see one model, Group B can only see the other model, and administrators, of course, will see everything. But again, I'll just leave it on the single report model for the moment. I'm going to just enable the advanced options here. This is the splitting that I was talking about. So we want to take our reports and break them out by customer. So at the top of the current page, and that's why it's important to know where the page is, which is why we have to add the page header in the in the indexing model. So at the top of the current page, I want to split it when there's a value change in the customer field. that will segment the document down automatically as we ingest it into the warehouse. Could be done at order level potentially, but this report sort of aligns itself with splitting it down by customer name. Need to tell it how the index fields map together. So the customer links to my customer field in my index model, and my order number index in report warehouse links to the order number field in my index model. The final thing I need to do is to do this naming. At the moment, the naming does not have the indexes that I want. So I've defined them up here, but they're not available in this drop down yet. So I need to just save this and then come back in again. And that will sort of refresh the available list for me, and then I can come back in here and name it. So there's two different namings. As you can see, there's an auto name. This is the document name. So the document, remember, is going to be split down. The document is the segmented report. So the document is going to say something like Betty's Music Store, the name of the customer, Betty's Music Store from, and then the name of the report. So Betty's Music Store from Class Jan, for example. The report name, this is just the actual physical report name. I won't bother with the document date on there. So this will just say Class Jan, Class Feb, or Class March. And I think that's it in terms of the document type definition. So you'll notice I haven't told it where the files are coming from at the moment, and that's done through the filing task. So I'm going to just create a new folder here called Inbox. And this is where I'm going to pick up the reports from. So I'm going to create a filing task that's on my music distribution reports. And I'm just going to skip over and just do the essential bits here. So we're going to pick it up from, sorry, don't need that. The file path we're going to pick it up from is our named path inbox, and the files are called class star.prn. So obviously January, February, March. You can use whatever wildcard you like in there, of course. I'm not doing any pre-mining or pre-filing tasks. Don't need to unzip an archive or get it from an FTP or anything like that. So it's a fairly straightforward filing task here. I'm just going to tell it that I want it to go into my music group, and within the music group specifically, I want it to go to my music distribution reports. No converters, no sort of XCDIC or anything like that. I'm going to delete the files once they're processed. Typically in a production environment, you would automatically start that task when a new file appears, but we don't want to keep on waiting 10 seconds for the files to appear each time, so I'm not going to use that one. So that's the filing task. We now need to be able to run that filing task. We can't run it manually directly. We do need to run it through a filing process. So I'm going to create the filing process. And again, this bit's pretty straightforward. Music distribution. I want to run, I've got a typo there, but I'll leave it. I'm going to run the distribution filing task, and I'm going to run it. I just have to put something in here. Doesn't really matter what it is because I'm going to run it manually, but obviously you can see that you can schedule it if you want to. So I'm just going to save that. Where are my errors? Possible to schedule a date from the past. Well, we'll do it in the future then. Okay, so there's my my filing process defined. So we're ready to go. I'm going to take my 3 reports from the sort of the backup folder, put them into the inbox, and now I can run this filing task. So it takes a few seconds, longer than Automator, but we should see now. You can see this processing, and as long as I've configured that filing task and document type correctly, these should eventually disappear. I can keep a quick eye on that just to see how things are going. If I log into the client, I will hopefully see that they're starting to populate in there just to make sure, so that if I have made a mistake, I'll see, yeah, okay, so we can see Class Feb is in there now, so we see it's working, and I know I'm not just sat here waiting for a mistake to pop out. So let's come back and we'll monitor the folder. And we'll see all of a sudden these will all disappear at the end. We're not sort of waiting ages and ages for them to disappear consecutively. So it shouldn't be too much longer. There they go. So if I now refresh this, you can see it's now populated the report warehouse with these 3 documents. So in terms of the users of report warehouse, all they need is HTTP or HTTPS access to this server. They do not need the inbox. They're not in the inbox anymore. They've been lifted from the inbox. They've been taken into the database, and they've been segmented and placed into this storage location. The individual users do not need access to this storage location. It's report warehouse that needs access to this. And you can see they're zipped up and they're segmented in a little bit of a strange way. There's not a one-to-one correlation here with what we see in the warehouse. The engine takes care of all that. So our users now can log in from anywhere where they have access to this website, and they'll be able to retrieve data based on their security privileges. So there's 2 main sections here. We have the report search and the document search. So if I look at the report search first of all, this is sort of the most similar to using Monarch on the desktop, I suppose. So instead of opening up the report manually, I can just click on it from the report. Of course, we can search here by dates, and I'll come on to this a little bit more in a moment or two. But at this level in the report list, we can just click on a report, select the view we want to see. Again, bearing in mind I'm on a virtual machine here with SQL Server running locally, so it's a little bit slow, but you'll be able to see the functionality. So if we look at the report view, then this is pretty similar to looking at the report window within Monarch. But there's one nice little feature that I want to mention briefly as we go through. And that's the ability to annotate reports at various different levels. So we can have a global level report annotation. So if I want somebody to check out January, I can right click up here and create a report annotation and just say needs a check. And you can also add annotations at page level or even right down at selection level. So if I want this particular order number to be reviewed, I can right click, do a selection annotation, and then review this. So these annotations, you can see directly, you can see the background here is green, telling me there's an annotation on it. And as we scroll through the report, you can see the highlighted areas, again, have an annotation. But when we're searching for a report, we can choose to only retrieve reports that have an annotation. So we'll see that in a moment or two. Of course, being Monarch, we've got the report model being applied on top of this. So we know the whole concept of Monarch is that we can extract all the fields and turn it into a data table. So of course in Report Warehouse, we can do that as well. So this entire report now, because I'm using report search at the highest level and I don't have any security applied, the entire report is having the model dynamically applied to it, and it will give me the table results. Okay, so this is actually happening real time against the report. So it's generating all the rows of data for me using whatever model is specified. So of course that's the extraction model that we looked at a moment or two ago in the desktop product. So there we have it. There within the browser itself, we can now see all of this data. So we can obviously search it, look at it, sort it. We can also customize it at 2 levels. So the first level would be to customize it with whatever is in your model file. So again, it's just taking a little bit of time because I'm running SQL locally as well. So here, if there were multiple model files, we could select whichever one we wanted. You may remember there was a filter in there. The returns filter is defined as part of the model file. So we can select a predefined filter. And then it will just show us I think it was 3 rows, maybe a different report, I'm not sure, but we'll see that in a moment or two. Yeah, so there's the 3 rows of the return. Or of course, we can do a dynamic filter. So I can, any of the fields that are extracted, I can filter on. So quantity greater than 10 and all those sorts of things. I won't apply that, but you can see you can have a dynamic filter there as well if you want to. And of course, we have the summary. As we saw in that model file, we have the summary. So any predefined summaries in the model file will also be available for us to view within the browser. So these are both the browser views. The ones with the white background are the two browser views. Just give that a moment or two to build the summary. Again, it's building that summary dynamically for us straight away. And do need to drill that down. I should have changed that as a default, but it's come in at the highest level, so let me drill down and apply that. And again, you can filter within the summary if you want to. So unlike Monarch Desktop, where you'd need to come back to the table window and do a filter and then see how that impacts the summary, within the report warehouse, you can dynamically filter directly on top of the summary. So looking at it inside the browser is these two. So we can do the same thing. We can get the data out directly as an Excel file. So if I click on Excel, I don't have Excel on this VM, but you'll see it's doing the export now, and in a moment it's going to pop up that the file is available for download. So you can directly execute it. There you go. So it's created this Excel table just as a straightforward XLS file, which you could then, of course, distribute or work on locally. So we've got web-based views, we've got Excel-based views, we've also got a PRF-based view. This is a Monarch-specific portable report format. And the portable report format basically contains the report and the model file as a little package that you can take away and work on locally if you want to. So you can effectively take anything out of the server product and create a local copy of it for you to modify or work on locally if you wish. And the easiest way of doing that is to download a PRF file. Again, all of these are configurable through various levels of security. So that's the simple report, sorry, the report list. Staying with the report search for a moment, let's have a look at the simple report search. I'm going to bring in my music distribution report. And you can see here, apart from the date ranges, we can just see the annotated reports, for example, but I'll leave that on all reports for now. But this can be useful, obviously, if you're using those annotations as part of a workflow. But I'll leave it on all reports. You can see these are the two indexes. So I could, for example, look for a specific report number, just checking a report number that I know exists. So if I look for 536118 is a valid order number, sorry, not report number. Because it's indexed, it's relatively quick. It's obviously not doing a text search through the entire warehouse, and it's telling me that we found that order number in the class Feb report. But again, because I'm logged in as administrator with full access, if I now look at the report, it's going to bring in the entire report. So this report contains the order number 536118, but obviously we're also seeing everything else within this report as well. And that's because we're doing it through the report search. And the other thing we can do in the simple search is the dynamic, because this customer is not encrypted. So the advantage of not encrypting it is we can get this automatic drop down. So if we look for Betty's Music Store, it's now going to tell me that Betty's Music Store, I think, is found in 2 different reports. And if I leave them both selected and click on the report view, it's now dynamically adding those 2 different reports in together. So we're seeing January. And if I scroll down far enough, because I'm in report view, sorry, I'm going to click on March here, and then we see March independently. So, and if I go into the data here, it's going to contain data from both reports. So it's just like opening 2 reports in the same Monarch desktop session. So there is an advanced search where you can search across multiple document types and those sorts of things, but not really too relevant for the way we have it at the moment. So that's the report search, and I think that's possibly the most logical, because we're used to seeing reports as separate files on the desktop, and this is working in exactly the same way. But I think maybe the more useful section is this document search, and the document search is the segmented report. So again, I'm going to look at my music distribution report, and if I don't do anything at the moment, just search everything, you can see rather than just seeing the hit list of the 3 reports, I get a hit list of all the individual documents. So I can specifically now select the ones I want. So if I want to say Fandangos from class Jan and bluegrass records from class March, for example. Let's try that again. Oops. Okay, I'll select all of them. So if I want to select, no, I should try that. Control class Jan. So selecting those two individually. If I now look at the report, what it's going to do is dynamically create a new report just on those two selections. So you see we've got March bluegrass records and January Grant country music as a dynamically created report. We know this has come from two separate files, but it's joined them in together into one dynamic report for us straight away. And of course, if we look at the data, we're going to see the data dynamically from those two reports. So you can imagine in a moment or two how that's going to lead on to security. We can have users that can only see specific sections and have specific functionality. So this is where I think it really becomes much more useful in applying security at sub-document level. We'd expect maybe even using normal network security, the ability to allow some people to see one report and others to see another report, but you wouldn't have the ability to allow people to see sections of a report, whereas we do once we've got it into the document search level. So let me just go in and take a quick look at this as well. So obviously that was picking it from a list. If we wanted to choose an individual customer, again, we'll do Betty's Music Store. So we know that they're in, I think it was January and March. So again, we can just bring back the individual hits from there. And of course, if I open that up now, because I'm in document search rather than report search. So last time you'll remember we saw all of class Jan and all of class March, but because I'm now in the document search, I'll only see the Betty's Music Store section from those two report files. So significant difference using the two different tabs, even though they look quite similar in terms of extracting things. And let me just check if there's any questions. I don't see any at the moment. So let me move on just to finish off on the security side of things. So at the moment, I'm logged in as administrator, so I can see everything. I can segment it, but of course, I can still see absolutely everything. I'm just going to create a user that won't be able to see everything. Because again, there's one significant option to point out there. So I think my session is ended, so I'm just going to log back in again. And I'm going to go to rights and privileges. I'm going to come into users. I'm going to create a customer called Betty. And you can now see that there's an awful lot of granularity on this first screen, and there's a whole load of more screens that we'll see in a moment or two. But even at this level, I can restrict what I want Betty to be able to do. So I've got to give her access to something. I want her to be able to search for documents and reports, but I don't want to be able to delete or annotate or anything like that. It's just literally at this stage, just search for the reports. I'm going to save that. Oops, the full name, which can be the same as the username. So you need to sort of create the shell for that user first of all, and then when you go back in, you'll see you then get all the various different options here. So you can see there's an incredibly granular level of security that we can apply. So I can search for documents, but once I've searched them, I can't do anything at the moment. So I want to come into views here, and then from the document search, I only want to allow the report and download the Excel data, for example, doesn't matter. And same thing for the report search. I want to allow to view the original report and download the Excel data. Save that. And again, we need to come down to document types. I have to explicitly say you're allowed to search the music reports. If I don't say that, then won't be able to allow anything. So at the moment, Betty can do anything and retrieve all customers from the music reports. So when I say do anything, sorry, at the moment, Betty can retrieve all customers. She can only search and sort of view the report in the Excel file, but you can do that for all customers. So the final aspect is to come into the security keywords. Again, there's a couple of ways of doing this, but this is the easiest way. Come into security keywords, and for the music distribution report, I only want Betty to see where the customer name is Betty's Music Store. And let's also give Betty access to another customer. So it can be Betty's Music Store, or it can be, it doesn't really matter, so Fandango's Records, for example. And again, if I've done that correctly and not missed anything rushing through a little bit quickly, we'll now log out as the administrator, and we'll log back in as now the new user, Betty. And you can see Betty's got a slightly different screen layout, so I'm just going to toggle this one to make it similar to what we already saw. So here's the document search and the report search that we enabled. So let's do a report search first of all. And you can see now exactly the same way I can click on a report, but this time when I click on a report to extract or to view, I'm only going to get two icons. I'm not going to get my HTML table or summary views, and I can't download the summary to Excel. I've only got the two views that I've allowed. But if I look at class Jan, so previously when we brought it back at report level, we know we're opening up the entire report and we'd see all customers. But because of those security keywords, what we're going to see is that here's Betty's Music Store. I've got data now that's not available because I don't have access to those records, and then it jumps straight onto Fandango's records. So you can see it's applying the security within the actual report. And of course, I probably should have selected the HTML data view rather than XML rather than XLS, because I can't show this. But of course, you can assume that if I download this XLS file, I'm only going to see the records from the report window that's available to us. So even at report level, it's applying this security on top of the ability to see individual sections. And of course, if we do a document search, I think this is maybe a bit more logical, but if we search now on a document search, whereas previously I saw all customers, now I'm only going to see the customers that I'm allowed to see. And of course, the report and the Excel file are only going to contain these individual documents. So that's a real sort of lightning view of the functionality of Report Warehouse. There are some additional features in there. So we have something called Total View, which links into the pre-mining. So if you want to be able to do things beyond viewing predefined summaries and sort of ad hoc filtering, so if you want to build your own summaries dynamically in the browser, I guess, then you can enable the total view component. So it does have an impact on performance, and it does have a big impact on database storage requirements, but you can enable it per document type. It's not a global setting. And the total view basically gives you the ability to create your own summaries. So the summary that's in the model file is a breakdown of sales by customer. If I wanted a breakdown of sales by media type, for example, if I have total view, I can do it directly in the browser. If I don't have total view, I have to extract the data down to Excel, and you create a pivot table in Excel. So it's whether you want the overhead, the hit on performance, and the storage to stop you having to do anything locally in Excel, I guess is what it boils down to. We've also got a product called used to be called Report Warehouse, used to be called Enterprise Server, I think. So the product is still, I believe, called ES Style. What ES Style does, it allows you to place a predefined HTML or I guess CSS, I'm not sure, a style sheet, basically a web-based style sheet on top of this. So rather than seeing sort of a plain text report file, you could create a style sheet that looked very much like an invoice or a shipping report, and with logos and colors and different fonts and all those sorts of things. And then you can automatically apply this data to the style sheet and create a sort of a customer-facing PDF with all your logos and registered office at the bottom and VAT numbers, tax numbers, all that sort of thing, as you would expect to see on a normal invoice. And I think at a very high level, that's Report Warehouse. Just having a look at the comments and the chats here. So So yeah, I think my colleagues are reiterating. So report warehouse, we certainly SQL Express is not supported. It will run on SQL Express and in a limited function. So we don't support it, and certainly as a commercial deployment, we would not suggest putting it on SQL Express. It is running on SQL Express on this machine, and I think you'd agree that the performance is taking a bit of a hit for that. So we certainly don't support that in a commercial deployment. So pages. So I'm not sure if that was in response to a question, but pages is equivalent to documents. So yeah, I guess what it's doing there is it's taking the three documents, so the three reports, and as we take them into report warehouse, it's virtually segmenting them up into different pages. So I don't know how many pages there's maybe 20 or 30 different virtual pages that it's creating as we ingest these reports, and the security then can be applied at page level, as we saw. So I think that's the three questions that have gone into the chat. I don't see any separate questions. No.
We had those pre-registered questions.
Yeah, let me just pull those up. Okay, so one question was just sort of asking about the overview. So hopefully the overview to learn whether report warehouse can benefit your company, dealing with things like, for example, insurance fee schedules, utilization reports. Obviously depends on your use case. But if this demo hasn't answered that, then please do get in touch, and we can progress that further. But yeah, effectively, it's a report retrieval engine with the ability to apply granular security, even at sub-report, within a report level. And obviously, it's all indexed. It's all much easier than just having all those files in a folder to find your own way. And once you've found the report, you can then apply a Monarch model to that report and see your data views, your calculated fields, your filters, your summaries, obviously. So it's almost like having Monarch on the desktop, but through the browser. Not full Monarch functionality, to be fair, but pretty close in terms of turning reports into data. The next question is on an unrelated subject. Read documents when they may appear blurry, sometimes received from fax. So this is quite a common question, and unfortunately it's one where we have to sort of refer you to using an external tool to do some sort of OCR functionality. So Monarch needs a text layer. So if you have a PDF, it must be a text searchable PDF. So you've got to be able to sort of highlight the text and copy and paste that into Notepad, for example. If you don't see that and it's an image file, so a fax is typically a TIFF image, either as a TIFF file directly or as a PDF containing a TIFF file, those unfortunately are not going to be suitable for Monarch. Now, you can take those through a third party or an Altair OCR tool. We have other products that has OCR functionality built into it, but you are very reliant on the quality of the image file. So J's coming in as I's and S's instead of Z's, and Z's, sorry. So all those sorts of issues where you might typically, obviously with Monarch, it's absolutely critical that we're dealing with accurate data, which is why we prefer text files to having to take an image file through OCR. The OCR is going to determine your data quality. And the final question was on getting data that where the data doesn't necessarily line up. To be honest, the answer to that is going to be very specific to exactly the structure of the data and whether it goes onto multiple lines and whether the number of fields on each line are consistent. If you have a consistent number of fields on each line, then there's a good chance you'll be able to do that through the floating trap. If you don't have a consistent number of fields, so in other words, imagine you've got 5 different numeric columns, but any 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 of those columns could be populated. It then just depends on how bad the floating is, because if you can't tell looking at the screen which column that numeric is going to be in, then you wouldn't be able to solve that using any of the trapping technique. It might only be sort of human intuition that lets you do that. So we need to see the report to come up with the best solution. The other thing that's worth bearing in mind is if it's a PDF file, then there are lots of different engines that you can use. So when you're opening up a PDF file, I don't have a PDF file here, but I think, fake one. So this isn't going to allow us to see the data properly because it's not a real PDF file, but I think it will fool Monarch enough to allow us to see the options. Sorry, I didn't want data prep studio. I can use it. So this is the same in Classic. I meant to open it up in Classic, but if we bring it into Data Prep Studio instead, we see the same thing. So where is it? It's in PDF options.
It didn't. I think it knew that you were tricking it as a PRN.
You're right. You're right. It's come straight in as a. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because typically when you bring a PDF, it'll automatically will open in document options.
Yeah. Okay, so
that's okay.
I'll force it to do a PDF here, and it might do the same thing. So yeah, what I was trying to show here is just the PDF engine. I know I'm running down on time now, so let me just.
That's quickly. Okay. Which I think. Let me launch the poll question right now, because
Sure.
before we lose everyone. So if you have your screen open at full view, you'll have to minimize to probably make a selection on the topic that we want to see. And in fact, it's starting off with, would you like to have a session where we review trapping? Basically, whether it be a PDF or text document, or for those that might have Monarch Server, would you like to learn more about sequential or parallel jobs? There's also the DPS summary enhancements. And then the fourth option is other. And when we end this webinar, it does prompt you for a survey. Let us know how we're doing. And there's a spot for any comments and feedbacks that you can share on to us that we can consider as a future topic to vote on. We would have that presented. So it allows you to select just one option. So make it the most favorite that you like to. But again, if we don't cover one of the topics this time, these options still stay on the voting ballot for the following session. And so as usual, we'll do a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so we will cover how to do some trapping. So we'll try to make sure to have some little options for append, footers to go over those different template types. And let's see.
Okay, so I'm not sure if anybody is still able to see my screen there, but
yeah, it looks garbly goop.
I didn't have any luck fooling Monarch into thinking it was a PDF. But if you open up a PDF, you'll see in the PDF options there's a drop down where you can select the engine, and selecting an older engine will sometimes line up the data a little bit better than the newer engines. But certainly worth trying that.
Yep. And again, we'll have that to cover for the next session.
Yeah.
So again, that handout section, this is the copy of the PowerPoint. These are some of the helpful links. In the documentation, if you actually search for that Monarch Help Guide, type in PDF options, I believe it'll be able to show you how to work with that. Again, the user community, you can always contact support for any questions. They'll provide some guidance. The Monarch Forum, again, does encourage you to subscribe, just so you'll receive some notifications when our next upcoming release, as well as other sessions and so forth. Just trying to go through this really fast because I know we're coming right on time. We're past time. The model library, we're up to now, I think, 2,500. It might be 2,600 pre-built models and workspaces. That's a great resource to take a look at. Our e-learning site, you can take the Monarch certification course. and earn a LinkedIn badge to attach to your name. And Marketplace for the latest release for 2023. But like I said, come the end of May, mid-June, we might be having that 2024. If your organization has not leveraged the complimentary onboarding session, we do have that available that you can schedule. And our next session will be June 18. And again, we'll cover that trapping, working with Monarch. And for those that have members that have passed, wishing you all a safe Memorial Day weekend. Thank you, and we'll end this and have a great remaining of your day and weekend. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.